Hello there, I'm Ashley Brown. I work for the Football Supporters Association. We're a national organisation looking at football across England and Wales. I'm the head of governance and supporter engagement. I'm a Portsmouth fan and have had a lot of experience in dealing with bad governance through my own club's demise in the sort of 10 or 15 years ago when it was in all sorts of problems. And I was part of a group of people that got involved and helped save the club, which is what really got me active and interested in football governance. So I think good governance in sport covers a number of areas. I think first and foremost, clarity around rules and regulations. People need to understand how things are managed and what the potential sanctions are if you get into trouble. Too often in sport, it's really unclear how these things work, and there's some sort of convoluted, obscure rules and regulations that no one really understands. Next up, financial control. Financial control is at the heart of good governance as far as I'm concerned, and sport is a key area where financial control regularly is poor or not good or unclear. Sometimes this is actually fraudulent, but often it's just either incompetence or people that for some reason can't manage finances in the way that they might do in normal life. And you know, I come from a football background, and that's no clearer than it is in football. Incredibly successful businessmen have taken over football clubs. They've obviously got a sound background in finance. They've managed their own businesses, but bring them into football, everything goes wrong. You know, things that they'd never do in their own business start to happen. Clubs get into millions, tens of millions, even hundreds of millions of pounds worth of debt. So good financial control is absolutely at the heart of it. Stakeholder engagement is really important. You know, the stakeholders can be all sorts of different people, but in sports, typically participants, supporters, those are often the key stakeholders that are ignored. And it's key to get their involvement, their opinions. They're the people that really are the past, present, and future of whatever sport we're talking about. So having them involved in decision making, making sure they understand decision making is absolutely key. And then across all of that, transparency. Transparency is really, really important and often missing in sports governance. But making sure everybody understands how an organisation or how a club is being run, intends to run its business and manages itself is important. Finally, the one thing I would say is ensuring that the boards have strong independence integrated into them. Again, a problem we see with sports governance, people that perhaps may have earned their position or feel they've earned their position on the board from being embedded in it for many, many years, but sometimes as volunteers, and undoubtedly have done a huge amount for the sport. But we need more balance on boards. We need to make sure there's independence and expertise across a board to make sure that we have good governance. Yeah, I think I'll probably focus very much on football here. And I think that supporter perception has grown significantly across the last perhaps decade, maybe a little bit more. And most of that is due to the repeated problems that we've seen in football. We've had so many clubs get into administration, get into financial difficulties, almost become insolvent, some becoming insolvent. And I think when you are a supporter of one of those clubs, that's when you really become alive and awake to the importance of sports governance. But equally, when big, well-known football clubs get into trouble, I think that makes other supporters aware also of why governance is important. Football clubs are really integral parts of communities. They're hugely important to the heritage of a city, a community, to their fans, and they should never be in threat. They should never be in threat through poor governance. And that's why I think, because of the problems that we've seen, that supporters are now perceiving the importance of governance, getting themselves a little bit more involved in it, and keen to understand. And that's, you know, that's again why things such as transparency, simplicity of rules and regulations are important. You need to help people understand, get them involved in that side of football as well. Well, I think the main threat from a sports club's perspective is that they disappear forever. That's the ultimate threat, and we've seen it happen, sadly. It's something that's not just a phenomenon in England, it's across the whole of Europe. In the UK now, we're seeing rugby union clubs come under threat through poor governance, poor financial management. So it's not something that just resides in football. I think I think it's also relevant for a national organisation as well. National organisations equally have a threat from commercial sponsors, commercial partners. Commercial partners are becoming very, very aware of who they're doing business with, and if a club or if a governing body has a bit of cloudy governance, a bit of grey governance, we're not quite sure how it's run, it's got some poor financial performance, then those commercial partners are going to perhaps back away from it. The media is always keen to look at who different partners are working with, and keen to highlight wherever there might be issues or questions about why two bodies are partnering together. So I think there's a real commercial threat as well. But equally, from a governing body perspective, people will start to lose faith in them if they have repeated problems, either directly with their own organisation or across the clubs and sports that they manage. If you see problems in those sports, then people will lose faith in that organisation, will lose faith in that board. I mean, you look at a body such as FIFA, probably the most powerful governing body of any sport in the world, arguably. And there's a huge amount of good work that FIFA does. But if you ask football fans across the world, certainly across large parts of Western Europe, they would turn their nose up at FIFA. They would question FIFA because of the scandal that surrounded the very top of FIFA. It may well be that all of that, or most of that, has been cleared out, but people still think as FIFA as a corrupt organisation, whether that's deserved or not. And that's because of its historic performance. It's probably deserved from what's happened around FIFA historically. It may not be deserved now, but that stigma sticks. Yeah, thank you. I think the most simple expectation is that supporters will have a club and a sport that's there for perpetuity. It's something that they wish to play, wish to support, that they don't have to worry about whether it's going to be there tomorrow, next month, or next year. I think that's the most basic expectation that any sports fan should have. I guess that that can materialize in various different ways. If a club or an organization is running well, supporters, participants would have very little concern or involvement in governance of that organization or that club. It's not something that they would worry about on a day-to-day basis. I think what the difference we're seeing now is that all too often fans, particularly of football clubs, are focusing just as much about what's happening in the boardroom off the pitch as they are on the pitch. You know, we've got real life examples in England right now. Clubs all the way through the pyramid: Everton, Wigan, Reading, Birmingham, West Brom, Southend, Scunthorpe, Chorley. I could go on with a list of clubs all the way across the pyramid where fan activists, instead of worrying about who they're going to sign in the summer transfer window, who they're going to sell in the summer transfer window, are wondering if they're actually going to start the season, and if they're going to start the season with a points penalty, what league they're going to start the season with, are they going to be demoted through poor governance? So rather than just a fan wondering if we're going to play well enough next season to stay in the league or maybe even get promoted, they're starting to have to worry about whether they're going to end up with being relegated through poor governance, which is something that can happen certainly in the non-league system in the UK, but also even in the top four divisions, you can get points penalties which effectively will relegate you. And those point penalties are deserved. If clubs cannot govern themselves correctly, cannot manage themselves correctly, then they have to be punished. You can take that argument all the way to the very top of the Premier League. The winners of this season's Premier League, again, Manchester City, currently being investigated for over 200 charges in relation to financial breaches by the Premier League. Things that date back over 10 years, things that, if they are found guilty of, would undoubtedly aided them to win previous titles. So it's not just about survival of clubs, it's about fair play and a level playing field. And I think that that is another way that this really materializes with football fans in particular. How can you compete against teams that are allegedly cheating through financial fair play rules to repeatedly win? How is that fair if you're not capable of competing with them because they cheat effectively? That's not what sport should be about. I think we have to be realistic in that a large proportion of fans, all they want to do is turn up at 3 o'clock on Saturday, watch their team, enjoy a game, go to the pub, have a chat with their mates about the game over a beer and head home. That's always going to be the way for some people, and that's understandable. You know, this is their escape from Monday to Friday work and grind. But increasingly, activists across football are becoming far more interested in sports governance, and that's for the reasons that I've covered so far. It's becoming important to them because they want to make sure that they're playing in a fair competition, that their club's going to survive and it's being run properly. And that is undoubtedly increasing. As an organisation, we have more and more discussions, more and more interest across our membership in those areas than perhaps we would have seen historically. How does sport embrace that? Undoubtedly, it's through better engagement, stakeholder involvement. You know, we would always push for fans to be involved in decision making at the top levels of their club. It's not just about engagement, it's about consultation. We've worked very hard in recent years to push for increased regulation in football, and we're actually starting to get somewhere. We've seen the Premier League release a fan engagement standard, the Football League to follow, and these include forcing clubs to have what we call a shadow board, so effectively a group of supporter representatives working very closely with the club's main board to be consulted not just on simple matchday operational issues, but also real business strategic issues, short, medium, long-term plans, financial management accounts, financial controls, all areas pretty much of the way that the football club is run. That's something that you'd never have believed would have happened as little as 2 years ago, but we're now starting to see it being forced through regulation in the top flights of football. And I think that's only going to get stronger. You know, the new regulator is coming in the UK for football. The regulator will have supporter engagement, stakeholder engagement, absolutely the heart of everything it does. So clubs will have to show and prove that they are involving supporters in discussion and in consultation and in decision making, or they'll be sanctioned. And that's a huge jump forward, but it's a positive thing. Football clubs should have done this off their own back, because there's huge benefits in involving stakeholders in the way that your club's managed. Unfortunately, they're having to be forced to do it. Some are embracing it. Some are really spearheading the way forward. Others are getting dragged along behind. But undoubtedly, over the coming years, we will see supporter groups, supporter activists, supporter representatives far more embedded in governance of football than we'd ever dreamt before.